All right. Um, sorry, that went down the wrong pipe. Hi, I'm JD Hubbard, and I'm here interviewing Professor Katie Funderburg.
Hi, JD.
Professor Funderburg is a professor at George Mason, pursuing her MFA in English. She's also from the state of Colorado, and today I just wanted to interview you on some of the magic and ritualistic practices from just your experience, especially as it pertains to living in Colorado. So, first I wanted to touch on symbolism. I'm sorry, before I go on, is there anything that you would like to say about yourself?
No, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So first we're going to touch on symbolism. So the importance of symbolism that we've covered in class is the range that symbols carry in religious practices. So symbols allow people to discuss and interact with religion, even when it's not physically present, in order to construct their own realities around these symbols. So one of the symbols that we discussed in class was the Christian cross, because it not only touches on the religion itself, but it also touches on the philosophy and history of Christianity. Do you know of any important symbols in your religious practice, and how do they connect to any myths or anything in your worldview, in your culture, such as how you interact with nature?
That's a beautiful question. So I think to think about this from like a personal perspective, right? There are certain symbols that I utilize in my like personal spiritual practice all the time, or that come up for me repeatedly. Those are things like spirals and trees. The moon is a big symbol, and I think those are symbols that are pretty consistent across other people I know who practice spirituality in the ways that I do. But in terms of like regionally specific symbols, Colorado is a land that is like environmentally really diverse, right? We have mountains, we have really dry high desert, we have plains. We are a landlocked state, so there's no ocean, but there are lakes and reservoirs and valleys and things like that. We have lands from like pine trees to aspen trees to like really tall prairie grasses to cactuses. So it's hugely diverse in that way. And it's also diverse in like the cultures that influence my state, and those are our cultures like the Native American tribes that were on the land before us, and the Hispanic communities that populate a large part of Colorado. And we have a lot of influence from Arizona and New Mexico and those types of cultures too. So there are a lot of different types of diversity affecting the land, and I think symbolically this creates a really interesting cohesive culture, because there are so many different factors like becoming symbols in our state specifically. There's a symbol of like the pine tree, and that means something pretty specific. There's a symbol of like red rocks, which is a really specific landmark. In terms of like smaller symbols and ones that have traveled, our state contains this site called Mesa Verde. Have you heard of it?
I don't think I have.
It's a national park, and it contains like ruins and cave drawings from the first peoples. And in those cave drawings, there is this drawing of a man with a flute called Cocopelli, and now it's kind of a Colorado symbol. Also New Mexico, because that Mesa Verde borders both states, and that's come to be a symbol in our state as well. So, yeah,
that's really cool.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot, and it sounds like you take not only from just like your local community, but also from like things that are stagnant and will always be there, like the what's called the spirals, trees, the moon, I like how you kind of touch on those, like because they'll always be there and because they'll always follow you. It doesn't matter where you go. Your spirituality, like your practice with your spirituality, can always kind of be there.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely see that within myself as well, where I look towards the moon often. And the sun, and like those are things that are pretty prevalent with me, especially being from Florida.
Yeah.
The sun, especially because we are literally the sunshine state.
Yeah.
You know, so
True.
yeah. I mean, I look towards the sun a lot.
Do you feel like looking towards the sun here in Virginia helps you like what does it do for you to have something that traveled from Florida to Virginia?
It kind of centers me.
Yeah.
Because it's like I never have to worry about like the sun's always going to be there.
Right.
You know, and especially because Virginia's so like environmentally different from Florida. Like there's no, I mean there are beaches, but we're not close to a beach here in Nova. And there's like I don't see the seagulls that I used to see. I don't see the certain trees, and it's very, very different. And the seasons actually change. It's very, very different. But the thing that didn't change was that the sun always comes up the next day, and it's very centering. And even during the pandemic, it was very nice to know, like, at least, you know, the sun's gonna rise tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the sun's gonna be there for me tomorrow.
That's true.
So, speaking on that, the sun's gonna be there tomorrow. That was kind of a little ritual for me, because at least during the pandemic, especially, where it was the sun's gonna be there tomorrow. I need to go bask in the sun.
Yeah.
I need to be outside. I need to go on a little walk. I found a like bay area that was really not bay area. It was like it's like a creek behind my house, like in the pathways that I used to like to go to because I would be surrounded by water. It's on like a sandy little divot in the creek, and I had a perfect like view of the sun during the midday.
That sounds so magical.
It was so nice. I loved it during the pandemic. And so in class, I would kind of describe that for me as a sort of situational ritual because it related to my specific need of being I needed to be outside. I was inside all the time. I needed to be outside.
Yeah.
In class, we discussed 2 different types of rituals. So we discuss prescriptive rituals, which are rituals that are kind of prescribed by a religious authority. So say like a priest or a shaman, something of that nature, or situational rituals, which are performed for specific needs. So like if you need healing or if something to help with, your mood. And we also go over the concept of taboo, something being taboo, which typically involves objects, people, or things, or certain behaviors that are like off limits supernaturally.
Yeah.
Would you be able to talk to me about any important rituals that you engage in with your spirituality, or and like how you would maybe classify them, like as prescriptive, situational, taboo?
I think I have a pretty. I think it's gonna be Yeah, it is situational. A situational ritual that I do here in Virginia, which is I take a walk. And I take a really specific path and I visit a very specific tree, and then I come back home and I take that same walk, maybe not daily, but as close to daily as I possibly can, and it makes me feel like it's a very spiritual practice for me because I'm not on my phone. I don't really take other people to that tree. It's like my very specific tree that I go to and talk to and like build a relationship in some ways with, and that helps me here because the like move from Colorado to Virginia has been like very disorienting for me. And my life is so hectic sometimes being a professor and being a grad student that I need something that grounds me. So similar to like your practice in the pandemic, like it makes me it gives me a sense of self in the midst of like things that feel out of control.
Yeah.
And that mode of ritual, I think, is something that I developed as a young kid in Colorado, because whenever I would like be upset or honestly any sort of feeling I was having, my mom was like, go outside about it, like let's go outside. And so from a really young age, I was outside in the trees all the time. And I also like am a very sensitive person in general, and like grew up really rural too, so going to friends' houses was like a big ordeal for me emotionally, and also for my mom, who had to like drive me at least 15 minutes to somebody's house, pick me back up. It's a whole thing. So resultingly, I spent a lot of time outside as a child. I was also a child of divorce, so I was between Texas and Colorado all the time, and like that was a huge switch also. That was really like super disorienting for me. But I found that I was in the same land every time. So even though my like emotional world felt like very in turmoil a lot, my woods outside remained really consistent. So even though I was like growing up and felt really out of control, I'd go to see the same trees every day. And then when I would see my dad, I would see the same backyard every day. And so it became like a way to find something that felt stable and calm and feel my feelings, and also connect with like other beings around me, and then connect with myself too.
Yeah. See, I've been through some of this. I've gone through similar things just because I moved at least 13 or 14 times as a kid.
Yeah, you're moving all the time.
Exactly. And so because of that, it became really easy to find things that stay the same.
Yeah.
And sometimes it wasn't even being outside, because I remember sometimes I didn't like to go outside when it got really hot. I'm from Florida. Sometimes when it gets hot, it gets hot.
It's hot.
So sometimes it'd be something as simple as, like I can go to a window and the sun's. I do love the sun. I go to a window, the sun's gonna be there. I can just sit and bask in the sun.
Yeah.
I can go to my sister, and my sister and I can share a relationship, and I'm going to make sure that I talk to her every day.
Yeah.
Things of that nature that were really grounding for me. Personally, I loved the indoors aspects. Also, I was, unfortunately, I was raised Christian, so then there were opportunities that for prescribed rituals for me, just from like my priest or my dad, who was like my spiritual leader.
Yeah.
Who he would try to get me to engage in certain things in his religion, to try to make me feel better about moving. Especially because I didn't like moving.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And like, at least, there's always going to be something for you to thump on, this little Bible. And things of that nature. So, but what about, like, is there anything like taboo that, what's it called? You would say that like you wouldn't do this because it breaks a rule for you?
Well, I think that there are modes of engaging in spirituality that I won't do for ethical reasons.
Okay.
But things that are taboo that, like, you're not supposed to engage in. That's a really interesting question. I think there's always, like, the social taboo of spirituality, right? Like, people are going to think you're strange if you are outside talking to the grass.
Yeah.
But I can't think of anything specifically taboo about spirituality. Obviously, we have the like taboos of girlhood, which are just like, don't have sex and don't be gay and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But those are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for me it was there were taboos, but they were growing up, I was really interested in spirituality outside of the Christian aspect. So I would try to find different pathways to navigate spirituality and not piss off God.
Yeah.
But that's also
yeah.
a taboo in and of itself, is trying to circumvent God and go to a different
That is
authority.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was really rough for me, because I it was a constant cycle of like, I can't not, like, I'm being raised Christian. I didn't like word it like this as a kid, but it was like, I'm being raised Christian. I know that guy's there. He's outside my door. He's knocking.
Yeah, yeah.
But
He's
I'm in
literally
here.
in my head.
Yeah, he's literally in my head. But I'm like in here, like trying to get around him in some way,
Yeah.
and he's pissed off about it. You know?
Yeah. That like oversight thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, being raised Christian, one of the rituals that we, in my family, did often was we went to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from, and one of the things that we've noticed is that in class is that these rituals come from religious narratives. Like, they tell us in church, you should be in church every Sunday.
Yeah.
You should read your Bible. When? Every day.
Every day.
And so I know, like, just from knowing you, that you've mentioned some of the rituals that you've gotten from your grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if any of these rituals that she instilled in you are from religion, or are there any rituals that you're familiar with that may have, like, derived from religion?
Yeah, this is a good question. I was raised by, for the sake of the interview, you already know this, but I was raised by my grandma and my mom. My mom worked a million jobs, so my grandma had care of my sister and I for most of our young life. And so she was raised, like, very deeply Catholic, and then had a sharp departure from the church. And wouldn't probably say that she was religious, but practiced rituals all the time. Wait, can you repeat your question? I forgot where I was going with this.
Do you think that any of the rituals that she instilled in you, your grandma, might be from religion?
Oh, yeah, okay. So she had, like, from observing her, she had little habits that she didn't seem like she, like, broke all the time, all the way, even though she didn't go to church and didn't believe in God, and, like, talked about that pretty openly. And one of them, ironically, was that we had a picture of Jesus by our door. She was superstitious, or maybe there's another word for that in the church, that if we took the picture down, or if she didn't put the picture in her home, like, bad luck would befall us. So she even though she didn't believe in God, she was, like, still anxious that there was somebody potentially out there watching and knowing if we, like, broke these rules.
She was agnostic.
Yeah. Yeah. But she had other little practices too. Like, she told me pretty much all my life growing up that if a stranger came to your door and asked for help, you had to help them because they might be an angel in disguise. Yeah. And I saw her engage in those types of church practices consistently, like inviting people into our home and feeding them, and like really, really looking for the good in the people around her, even when they were, like, pissing her off all the time. And that is like a character thing that I think a lot of people have, but for her it seemed more grounded in this, like, faith that she had walked away from. She had others.
I don't want to cut you off.
No, go.
But I know that I know that you have a meeting at 4.
I do. I have a meeting at 4:30.
4:30. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were
Great, thank
time.
you. Yeah.
Do you want to continue? You were saying that you know that she was agnostic, and that you would like to and that even though she didn't believe in God anymore, like the Christian God, that she still had these rituals.
Yeah, she still had these rituals that she did, and they even included prayer, even though she didn't call it prayer. She would say, like, oh, before bed, wish for good things, and say what you're thankful for in your head so that you can have good dreams. So she just sort of, it seemed like she just took these religious practices and then made them her own, how she wanted them and how they fit into her life. She struggled a lot with learning that queerness was okay, and that was something that she like really struggled to break, I think, from the church. And we talked about it pretty frequently, just like how much she had grown up being told that it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then leaving the church, how she had to like reframe that and still felt really hesitant when she got older and didn't have the church to like teach her what was right and wrong.
Yes.
Um,
And I
yeah.
see that's very common with a lot of
Yeah.
people, because with people who are deeply, like, who have deep roots in the church or have deep roots with religion, often say you can't trust someone who's not Christian
Mhm.
because what guides their moral path.
Right. Exactly.
And that's always like, that was always something that didn't sit right with me, because it was just like, how would you mean, hello little baby, you have
Hey,
a
love.
guest. What do you mean that you can't come up with those decisions on your own? So
Yeah.
if you don't have religion, you don't know
Yeah.
who guides your moral path. What would you do if everything was debunked?
Exactly.
And that never sat right with me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the way that many Christians think, where it's just like, even like what guides someone's moral path? You can't trust someone who's not Christian.
Yeah.
How it is, I guess. Or I'm sorry. Back to rituals. But I just wanted to say, because your grandma had a difficult time that with morals after leaving.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you know,
Totally. Exactly.
I've just seen that before. So throughout class and in our textbook, especially the textbook, it puts a lot of emphasis on certain rites of passage, and rituals mark the transitions in our lives.
Mhm.
So between different stages of life.
Mm-hmm.
So it particularly focuses on these 3 different phases,
Mm-hmm.
which is separation. So taking yourself out of the context of society that you were in previously.
Mm.
Transition, which is kind of like how it sounds. It's the transitionary period between the separation, being separated from society as you were previously, and until your incorporation, which would be you being incorporated back into society as this new version of yourself that you are now.
Yeah. Okay.
So, do you want me to give you an example, or do you think
Yeah.
you have
An example would be great.
There's 2 different examples I can think of off the top of my head, which is, I forgot what tribe it is, but it's a Native American group that goes, and it's a rite of passage for to become, I believe it's either a shaman or just an adult, where they separate you from the group. You talk to your religious leader, and your religious leader kind of guides you through this new process that you're about to go through. You ingest something
Mm-hmm.
that connects you with nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it says in the book that it makes you have like
Yeah.
how do you pronounce that word?
Hallucinations.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Hallucinations.
Yeah.
And that's during that would be your transitionary phase.
Yes.
Is when you're going out into nature. And then incorporation, when you come back, and you're talking to folks about
Okay.
you're talking to folks about what you went through your transitionary period, and you're incorporated back into society.
Mm-hmm.
Or something, I don't want to say more American, because those are the indigenous people that
Yeah.
live here. So maybe
More contemporary. Perhaps?
Yes, thank you. Would be dating.
Yeah.
You're single, you're walking through life, you're separated from singlehood, as you navigate a relationship with someone. Then you go through the transitionary period of being engaged,
Mm-hmm.
Until you are incorporated back into society as someone who is married.
Okay. I see.
Yeah. So would you be able to describe a rite of passage that's been especially important to you, or how it reflects these 3 phases? I know you discussed one with me earlier. I don't know if you want to still discuss it. If you do, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to discuss two. Well, one is not my story, and one is, but the rite of passage you were talking about with the native tribe. My mom and grandma lived in New Mexico for most of their lives, and they lived really close to the Navajo reservation, and my mom's and her brother's friend was supposed to become chief of the tribe, and did that passage, like took peyote and did the like nature walk. There is a word for it that I'm forgetting, and I shouldn't have. Shitty of me. Anyway, and then was reintegrated back into his tribe, and so that like that way of being is really closely connected to my family, and I think I've always been taught to like listen to Native people's ways of being. Anyway, so that resonated with me because that is a story I've been told often of like who he was, his transition, and then who he came back to be. So yeah, not my story, but closely connected to my family.
Yeah.
My
That's
like
really
family's ritual is when a girl, because I was raised by all women. When a girl gets her period, we have a party, and it's like it was a really big thing for us. Like my mom and grandma talked to me about it a lot, and talked to me about what to expect, and like really tried to make sure that I understood that being a girl was something to be proud of, because they were both raised to feel like it wasn't in many ways, and so made a lot of really intentional choices to talk to my sister and I about how women have like really special intuition and really special gifts and all of these things to carry life in our bodies. And so when my sister and I got our periods on separate occasions, there was a party. I was deeply embarrassed because I was 15, and then there, like in the party, we had like a special cake and food, and people came, and my mom didn't tell them that it was like because of my period, but it was this unspoken thing that like it was celebrating me and bringing my community into my life, and then like talking about it. And so that felt and was very ritualistic to us, and is something that we continued with like my little cousin, and that started with my grandma and her departure from the church and how she wanted to raise her daughter. I think it was also a really big reflection of the history that they were living through, and like how my mom's generation is very inclined to be really good as women, really good homemakers, but also really good workforce members. And so anyway, yeah, so the celebration of like womanhood felt very spiritual and like very important in our family in that way. We also have like tiny little rituals. Like when we go on a hike as a family, there are trees in Colorado called aspen trees that have this like dust on their bark that allows them to be white without getting sun bleached. And so we would like take a little bit of the dust on our fingers and put it on our faces because it's sunscreen naturally, and then do the walk. And that's just like a little thing that we've done every time we do a hike. Other little rituals we've done is that like every spring when the dandelions pop up, we snip off the first heads of them and make either cookies or like fried dandelion heads. I don't really know where that began, but it just is like a spring celebration that we do. So there are like little markers of communing with the earth that are specific to our region that my family practices and that I now practice. But the most like I think unique one that's directly connected to at least how I practice my spirituality is that period ritual.
How did you feel coming out of it? Like when you're, I guess if we want to the incorporation.
The incorporation period.
Yeah.
I definitely felt different, and I was so like embarrassed and anxious as a kid because I was a pretty late bloomer, so I was like ready for this to happen for a while. But looking back, I'm like very thankful that there was a ritual in place because it gave me something to kind of hold on to and show myself that there was a change happening. And so I think there was a grief that happened in that transition period too, of just like recognizing that I didn't get to be a little girl anymore, that I would have to now like fulfill roles that I'd watched my mom and grandma do their whole life.
Exactly.
So there was like it felt very heavy to me and very like grief laden to be like, okay, this is my adulthood now, like I have to step into it. But I was also thankful that there was like a clear marker and that it was intended to be something sweet and beautiful.
That's fantastic, and I'm so happy that they were able to instill those like beliefs in you. Yeah, and I'm glad that like it kind of stepped into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
It seems really beautiful.
Yeah, it felt very beautiful. It felt like painfully embarrassing, but like really beautiful also.
Yeah. So as we navigate through this next portion, I wanted to touch on magic.
Mm-hmm.
So anthropologists work strongly to distinguish magic from illusion. They're not party tricks.
Yeah.
We don't touch on party tricks.
Yeah.
So magic involves rituals that compel the supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
So we're usually like trying to call on to something or doing some sort of divination, or not us. We're looking at people in their culture, calling on for something, looking for some sort of divination from spirits or from gods and whatnot. And so we try to separate the line of magic and religion, while also kind of acknowledging that magic oftentimes takes place in religion.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of think, I believe, exorcism.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Good example.
So would you be able to discuss your own understanding of how magic is viewed in your culture, and if it's separate from, or if it's like a part of your religion? I don't think you were raised religious. So.
I was not raised religious at all, but I was like, my mom and grandma just kind of let me believe in magic. Like I was a very imaginative child and played pretend all the time, and they were really, nobody ever told me like, oh, that's not real.
Yeah.
There were kids at school, obviously, but in my home, they're like, yeah, magic is very much real. As long as you want it to be, go do your thing.
Yeah.
And so I think I got to keep that a lot longer than other kids my age did. But now, I would say that I think my spirituality has this really strong belief that everything kind of has a spirit within it, and I don't know where that came from exactly, but I do know that it feels like it's been with me kind of my whole life, and maybe that's just the mark of being a super sensitive kid, but like it feels like our house has a spirit. Like I walk in and I say hello house because it feels like a whole other entity, for example. And so I think that for me in my practices, magic is pretty alive in every little entity. But in terms of rituals, I think I understand magic as like a way of engaging with something bigger than me, and also just a reminder that human beings are like actually quite good and loving and things like that. And I think when I do my rituals and like use the supernatural or whatever you want to call it to like engage in my spiritual practice, I always leave feeling like, okay, I am like a whole person, and these people around me are like loving and good people, and I can trust that. And I think in a world that like really depends on everybody being very disconnected from their bodies, that is, maybe it's not magic per se, but it feels like a kind of miracle, you know?
What do you mean being disconnected from your body?
Well, I think that especially being a white person, I think that our white capitalist culture relies on us being unable to like gauge our needs, because as soon as we disconnect from our bodies, then we're like good workers and we are more inclined to purchase things, and less inclined to lead like happy full lives that might not align totally with capitalism.
And being a good worker.
Yeah. So I think the more you can connect with your body and like listen to your needs and slow down, the more, that's like a pretty radical and rebellious thing to do sometimes. And sometimes it takes, I don't know, if it takes magic and ritual to get there, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I like that. I've never talked to or never like connected with someone who also kind of sees the same way that I do. I do kind of, I was also very imaginative as a kid.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of felt like everything is Like,
yes, JD.
as a unit, like those are separate, you
Yeah,
know, and like
yeah.
I like attach things to them,
Yes,
you know.
totally.
And like I kind of see that they have their own, like, even if they don't have their own autonomy, they have their own like nature and way about them. Like they're, I use this house as something to protect me and something that is loving and kind that will hold me.
Yes.
I use my bed as a source of comfort. I like when I go outside, that is for everyone to, you know, enjoy, and I'm getting an opportunity to connect with this huge, like, something that's just so beyond me, like the earth, that it feels almost overwhelming sometimes, because it's just like I am significant in the ways that I interact with my community, but I'm so insignificant in the way that I'm so small as compared to what the earth itself is, you know, and the astronomical bodies that I kind of interact with, like the moon, the sun, and things of that nature.
Yeah, that really resonates with me too.
Yeah. So we have two types of magic in that we discuss. And so first we have homeopathic magic, which is based on the law of similarity. So like calls, the way I phrase it in my notes is like calls to like. So if things like walnuts being good for the brain because it has some sort of resemblance to the brain or the skull,
okay.
or wait, it's not. No, it's not. Or totem work. Things that like I noticed you do some totem work with what you do in like your spells that you conduct on the full moon. But that actually might be contagious magic. So I'm also going to ask about contagious magic at the same time, actually. So and then there's contagious magic, which is based on the law of contact. So when things come in contact with one another, they're able to call energy on the things that they have come in contact with. So this is also seen in totem work, like rabbit's foot for good luck. And focusing on things that have made contact with people. This one's kind of scary because it's like fingernails, your hair, your clothing. I remember one of the other things that they told us in the textbook was like they like sometimes they'd have like little wars. Not little wars, they'd have wars. And they'd shoot each other with arrows, and if they got an arrow that you were shot with, they'd take it back to their camp, and then they'd do spells on you to make you feel worse on your side.
That's horrifying.
Right? That was so scary to me.
Oh my god. Okay.
Would you be able to provide any examples? Maybe not so extreme.
That's extreme, but it's kind of cool to know.
Yeah, it is really cool.
Yeah.
Of these types of magics that you interact with, like in any healing practices or any practices that pertain to your mood or divination.
Okay, good. Wow, I feel like there's so many things I could say in response to this question. In terms of, what is the first type called again?
Homeopathic magic, to the law of similarity, like calls to like.
In terms of homeopathic things, I know that there are some out there that I do. What are they? I'm not totally sure.
So it could even be so much, because I believe earlier you told me about what's it called? You basking on something you feel bad.
Yeah.
Or no, maybe not. Homeopathic magic. I'm trying to think. So molasses.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's homeopathic magic.
I would say that's homeopathic.
Okay. So, I really draw. I think some people don't have the connect, like, don't like to practice their spirit, or don't make a conscious connection between their spirituality and their like healing and health. I do. They feel like the same thing to me. That's just where I'm coming from. So in terms of homeopathic medicine, there are things that have been passed down from my grandma that feel very spiritual to me that I don't know if she would say they're spiritual, but it doesn't matter because they're spiritual to me.
Exactly.
Those include things like when you feel anemic, or like when you're low on iron, especially as a woman, like right during or after your period. Molasses is supposed to cure that. like if you're sick, laying in the sun helps, like takes it away. And for me, it's like a spiritual practice to lay in the sun and be like, okay, sun, you can have my sickness. I don't want it anymore. And whether that's conscious or subconscious or coincidence, it doesn't really matter to me because I always feel better afterwards.
Really?
Yeah. I think I also, sometimes I do this thing called moon water where I just put water outside on a full moon night and I drink it the next day. And again, I don't think it matters if that is like actual magic or coincidence, but I set intentions with it of like, okay, I'm gonna put this water out. Moon, thank you. Like, please light up this water. And then the next morning, I drink it with an intention of like getting rid of things that are hurting me or like causing me sadness. Yeah, cleansing. And I feel lighter afterwards, and it feels good and special. I have like little daily rituals that I do for myself. So in the morning, I don't know what kind of magic this would be, but in the morning I wake up and I like express out loud that I'm glad that I'm alive. And then, literally. And then I like breathe with myself for a little bit and I go about my day. And at night, I like really intentionally walk into my room and close the day. So I'll like walk into my room and be like, okay, day, that you're done. I'm just with myself now. And then I journal and go to bed. And that is a practice I've been doing since I was like very tiny. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Lee. We're doing an interview.
We're doing an interview currently. Sorry.
What did you do to your face?
Sorry, it's a embarrassing story. I will tell you later.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's time that we, and I mean we are almost done. I think it's time that we touch on the different theoretical approaches to studying religion. In class we discussed different types like Marxist, functional, interpretive, psychosocial. As anthropologists, we just find it really difficult to define religion.
Makes
because
sense.
oftentimes we're either way too narrow about our description or we're way too broad.
Yeah.
Or like too vague. So in your own words, how would you just define religion?
Great question. How would I define religion?